What's up, everybody? This is Matt Miller, and today I'm going to be sharing my top 5 tips and tricks on how to achieve any goal. So, have you ever maybe been stuck and not knowing where to start, or maybe you didn't have a clear vision on where you wanted to go, or maybe you just didn't have any motivation to get started? Just anything that held you back from planning out a goal, knowing the step-by-step process, and achieving that goal. Those are all common challenges that everybody faces. Those are the same struggles that I've had. And I've always been super competitive. Starting early on, it always came from sports. I was always super competitive when it came to basketball, when it came to baseball. I always wanted to win. But it wasn't until, a couple years ago when I started getting really into, achieving certain types of goals. And this really accelerated my path towards goal achievement. One example that I share is that when I was younger, I never had a lot of financial education, and I always had a goal to make a lot of money. But I never really knew how to do it. I never had a clear vision. I never had that step-by-step process, and I never held myself accountable. But once I understood that goal achieving is mostly, psychological and mental, I was really able to accelerate my path towards achieving different types of goals and objectives. When I learned this framework of goal achievement, I realized that anybody can do it, and it's super easy to follow. All you have to do is follow a quick step-by-step process. So whenever I go to achieve a new goal, I always think about this 5-step process. And the first step is having clarity. It's really understanding where you're at right now. This is more the kind of reflection phase and understanding, what you want to accomplish. And it takes a lot of, maybe rating yourself. So looking at yourself in different categories and rating yourself 1 to 10. Where do you stand? So I think you need a clear jumping off point to understand where you're at, and then after that, following the next steps towards goal achievement. And I think it's super important that during this clarity phase that you know exactly where you're at and you're super honest with yourself. So the second step to any kind of goal achievement is understanding where you want to go. It's understanding exactly what your vision is. Always dreaming big and setting a big goal. So I think of the quote, shoot for the stars and land on the moon. I think that's a good mindset to have. Is set a really big objective, a really big goal, and then if you don't get there, it's not whether or not you achieve the goal, but it's how far you get and the process you take towards that achievement. So after you know where you're at, and you also know where you're going, the next step is understanding why you want to do it. So this is your why. So this is what's going to get you, through those bad days when you don't feel like you want to continue to go. If you have a really deep and passionate why, that's what's going to get you to wake up and continue to go towards that goal. And at the same time, when you're having a good day, if you remember that why, it just gives you extra motivation to have a great day. So the why is super important because it's going to keep you afloat on those bad days. And when you're thinking of your why, I really encourage people to dig deeper. And if you think you have your final why, it's probably not that root cause reason. So asking yourself why again and coming up with a different answer. And then maybe digging one step deeper and asking yourself why again to really understand, that very deep level of why we want to do something. So then after we know exactly where we are, exactly where we want to go, and we have that why to understand why we want to achieve that goal, the fourth step is knowing how we're going to get there. So this is the roadmap. This is writing down everything that you think you're going to need to accomplish in order to reach that final destination. And then once you have that task list, understanding what different resources you're going to need to pull into, what different skill sets you're going to have to acquire along the way. And then writing all of that out. And then I think it's super important to give yourself a deadline and try to work towards that deadline. And don't let perfect get in the way of progress. But also it's super important to start checking off those boxes, because it gives us momentum to move forward and keep creeping towards that goal each and every day. And I think it's super important that we think in advance. Maybe it's on a weekend of what our next week's going to look like, and blocking off different time slots each and every day to work towards this goal. So I think consistency is very important in order to give ourselves what we need, which is progress. And the fifth step to achieving any goal is to have accountability. So a lot of people like the idea of accountability partners, somebody that you can share this with and keep you on track on your day-to-day and weekly basis to understand that you're really working towards that goal. And I think it's super important to be accountable to ourselves. So if we make a promise to ourselves and we say that we're going to get something done, then making sure that we block off the time, have the time allocated towards what we need to get done, and then working towards that specific task in that time slot and giving it 100% of our attention and effort. And then if we're able to get done what we say that we're going to get done to ourselves, I think that's where we build self-confidence. And another thing that's important to consider is we don't want to get lost in making something perfect. We want to just get it done and move on. And this step is all about the action and holding ourselves accountable, whereas a lot of the other steps were more of the planning and more of the mindset. So I think a couple important things to note is, number one, we have to be in control of our days. And we have to have, I think about the power of intention. So if we're going to be intentional about something, then that's going to set us up for success. And I think another thing that's super important is, while we're making progress towards this goal each and every day, to really take time to celebrate and enjoy the accomplishments that we make, and that we shouldn't delay our happiness and our joy until we achieve the goal. It's super important to keep ourselves inspired along the journey by taking that time to celebrate. So let's say, for example, you have the goal to make it to the NBA, to play alongside the best basketball players in the world. I think the very first thing that you need to do is really understand where you're at. Where you're at in your career. Do you have, what it takes right now to get where you need to go? And I think it's important to rate yourself. Rate yourself on your ball handling skills. Rate yourself on your free throw shooting skills, your three-point shooting skills, and get that clear jumping off point. And after you know exactly where you're at, then defining really where you want to go. The next step is really understanding where you want to go. So if you want to make it to the NBA and that's your final destination, that's great. Just consider what it's going to take to get there. Like, are you willing to sacrifice all that different time and all that different effort in acquiring all those different skills to reach that final destination? And if you're good with that, great. That's a final destination, and then you can move on to the next step. And then the next step is understanding your why. So you know where you're at, you want to get to the NBA, but why do you want to do it? Is it just to get fame and do something that you think's fun, or can you dig a little bit deeper and maybe it's more about maximizing your potential, and you think it's a gift that you want to share with other people, something like that. It's really understanding why you want to do it on a deep level instead of just all the surface level stuff of maybe fame and money. And then the next step is, how are you going to do it? So this is the biggest brainstorming activity and takes a lot of thought. And you want to really kind of think about like a timeline. What do you need to do tomorrow? What do you need to do in the next week, the next month, the next decade to get you to a point where you think you have a shot at making the NBA? Who are the people that you're going to have to talk to? Who are the coaches you're going to have to discover? What is all of the activities you're going to have to do? You're going to have to, build up your strength training as well as your ball handling skills. And then setting those different objectives that go towards that final goal, and also setting deadlines and trying to accomplish certain things so you keep yourself on track. And then after you have your jumping off point where you're at right now, you know where you want to go, you know your why, you know your how, you know your roadmap, then it's just getting it done, taking action, and then holding yourselves accountable. And then I also think it's super important that in this process, if you don't hit one of those objectives that lead you towards that final goal, not to get down on yourself, but to pivot. Everybody's going to have to pivot and make adjustments in order to achieve that final goal. So I think it's very important to give ourselves a break and not just be so hard on ourselves. And then at the end of the day, while we're reaching towards that goal, just enjoying all the progress that we're making on a daily and weekly basis. So I think those are the 5 steps in order to achieve any goal. So I encourage everybody to go out there, make a plan, follow through on that plan, track your progress, and ultimately achieve any goal that you go and set out for.